Commander Sarah Blake had expected many things when she volunteered for the Kepler 442b diplomatic mission, but plummeting through an alien atmosphere in a burning shuttle while her pilot screamed creative profanities wasn't one of them. The surface rushed up to meet them with all the enthusiasm of a brick wall, and Sarah found herself wondering if her military insurance covered death by diplomatic incident. So much for peaceful negotiations, Lieutenant Maya Santos muttered from the co-pilot seat, wrestling with controls that had apparently decided to become decorative rather than functional. I'm pretty sure getting shot down violates at least 3 sections of the Galactic Accords. File a complaint later, Sarah replied, bracing for impact as the shuttle scraped through the canopy of crystalline trees that dominated this sector of the mining colony. Right now, let's focus on not becoming an unscheduled addition to the local landscape. The crash landing was surprisingly gentle, considering they'd essentially become an unguided missile for the last 30 seconds of flight. Sarah's tactical display flickered back to life just long enough to show her that they'd come down roughly 3 kilometers from the disputed mining site, in what her briefing materials had optimistically labeled as neutral territory. Maya, damage report, she ordered, checking her sidearm and the diplomatic pouch containing humanity's first formal peace offering to the Zephyrian civilization. Well, the good news is we're alive, Maya replied, running diagnostics on their equipment. The bad news is our comm array is fried, our beacon is dead, and our extraction coordinates are now approximately useless since we're nowhere near where we're supposed to be. Sarah peered through the shuttle's cracked viewport at the alien forest surrounding them. The crystalline trees caught and refracted the system's twin suns, creating patterns of light that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. According to her briefings, the Zephyrians had been raiding human outposts for 6 months, always striking fast and disappearing before security forces could respond. No one had managed meaningful contact with them, just glimpses of figures with distinctive pointed ears who fought with a combination of advanced energy weapons and what appeared to be medieval bladed weapons. Contact, Maya whispered, pointing through the trees. Sarah followed her gaze and felt her breath catch. Moving through the crystalline forest with predatory grace was a figure that could only be Zephyrian. She was tall and lean, with silver hair that caught the filtered sunlight and ears that rose in elegant points from the sides of her head. Her clothing was a mixture of what looked like ceremonial armor and practical combat gear, and she carried both an energy rifle and a curved blade that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. That's not a raider, Sarah realized. Look at the armor markings. That's their leader. Indeed, the approaching figure wore the distinctive golden circlet that Sarah's briefings had identified as marking Zephyrian royalty. Queen Lysara herself was coming to investigate their crash, and she didn't look particularly interested in diplomatic immunity. Should I prep the defensive systems? Maya asked, her hand hovering over the shuttle's weapon controls. Absolutely not, Sarah replied, checking that her translation device was functioning. We're here to make peace, not start a war. Besides, she's alone, which means this is either a trap or an opportunity. Sarah activated the shuttle's external speakers and stepped toward the airlock. This is Commander Sarah Blake of the Terran Colonial Authority. I'm requesting permission to exit my vessel for peaceful negotiations. The Zephyrian Queen stopped perhaps 20 meters from the shuttle, her amber eyes studying the crashed human vessel with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to tactical assessment. When she spoke, her voice carried easily across the distance, melodious but edged with steel. I am Queen Lysara of the Mountain Clans. You have violated our sacred boundaries and disturbed the harmony of the crystal groves. By the ancient laws of my people, I challenge you to combat. Face me with honor, or be marked as cowards unworthy of mercy. Sarah felt Maya's eyes on her as she considered their options. Standard military protocol called for defensive positions and immediate attempts to re-establish contact with their command ship. The diplomatic handbook suggested requesting a formal parley under neutral conditions. But something in the Queen's posture, the way she held herself with rigid control, suggested that this moment was more crucial than either manual anticipated. Maya, stay with the shuttle and try to get our comms working, Sarah said, activating the airlock sequence. And whatever happens, don't shoot unless I'm obviously about to die. Define, obviously, Maya called after her, but Sarah was already stepping onto alien soil. Queen Lasara stood in a combat stance, her blade drawn and energy rifle powered but lowered. Up close, Sarah could see that beneath the ceremonial armor, the queen looked exhausted. Her amber eyes held the kind of weariness that came from carrying impossible burdens, and there were stress lines around her mouth that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult decisions. "You offer me combat," Sarah said, her hands deliberately away from her weapons. "But I don't think that's what you really want." The queen's ears twitched, a gesture Sarah filed away as potentially significant. "You know nothing of what I want, human. Draw your weapon and face me, or return to your ship in shame." "I know you're protecting something," Sarah continued, taking a step closer despite every tactical instinct screaming at her to maintain distance. "The raids aren't random. They're targeted, precise. You're not trying to drive us away from the planet. You're trying to drive us away from something specific." Lasara's grip on her blade tightened, but she didn't raise it. "You speak of things you do not understand." "Then help me understand," Sarah said, and did something that would have horrified her superiors. She drew her plasma rifle and placed it on the ground at her feet, then stepped back with her hands raised. "I choose neither to fight nor to flee. I choose to listen." The queen stared at her for a long moment, her expression cycling through surprise, suspicion, and something that might have been hope. "You would make yourself defenseless before an enemy?" "You're not my enemy," Sarah replied. "You're someone trying to protect what matters to you. That makes you someone I want to understand." For the first time since the confrontation began, Queen Lasara lowered her blade. Queen Lasara sheathed her blade with a fluid motion that spoke of decades of practice, but her energy rifle remained ready in her hands. "You speak strangely for a warrior," Sarah Blake of the Terran Colonial Authority. "In my experience, your kind prefers to negotiate from positions of strength." "Maybe that's why we keep having misunderstandings," Sarah replied, keeping her hands visible and non-threatening. "Sometimes strength looks like knowing when not to fight." "An interesting philosophy from a species that tears holes in sacred ground to extract minerals," Lasara said, her amber eyes studying Sarah with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly complex puzzle. "Tell me, Commander, do your people always destroy what they do not understand?" Sarah felt her cheeks burn. "We didn't know the mining sites were sacred. Our surveys indicated they were uninhabited." "Because you looked for the wrong signs," Lasara replied, though her tone had lost some of its initial hostility. "You scanned for cities and structures, not for life itself. The crystal groves are not empty. They are nurseries." Before Sarah could ask what that meant, her comm unit crackled to life with Maya's voice. "Commander, I've got partial communications restored. Colonial Command is requesting a status update, and they're not happy about our unscheduled landing. Also, there's a weather front moving in that's going to make extraction complicated. Tell Command we've made contact with local leadership and are proceeding with diplomatic protocols," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off Lasara. "And tell them that any aggressive action will be considered a violation of my authority as lead negotiator." "Sarah," Maya's voice carried a note of concern, "the tactical situation assessment indicates you're currently standing in an exposed position with no backup." "The manual specifically says." "The manual doesn't cover this situation," Sarah interrupted. "Trust me, Maya. I've got this." Lasara's ears had swiveled forward during the exchange, a gesture that Sarah was beginning to interpret as curiosity rather than aggression. "You have authority over your warriors. This is unexpected." "Why unexpected?" "Among my people, those who lead in battle and those who speak for peace are traditionally different individuals. We assumed humans were similar." Lasara tilted her head, studying Sarah's uniform insignia. "You are both diplomat and warrior." "It seemed efficient," Sarah replied, then immediately felt foolish for such an inadequate explanation. "Actually, that's not true. I volunteered for this mission because I was tired of seeing conflicts escalate when they could be resolved through communication. Tired of war, Lasara mused. Yes, I understand this feeling. The admission came with such quiet weariness that Sarah felt compelled to ask, how long have you been fighting? Since I took the crown 8 seasons ago. Before that, there was peace for many generations. Lasara's expression grew distant. But then your mining operations began, and the crystal pools started dying. My advisors demanded retaliation. The warrior clans demanded blood. And I demanded solutions that no one could provide. Sarah's tactical training screamed at her that this was exactly the kind of intelligence breakthrough that could end the conflict, but her human instincts told her that pushing too hard would shatter the fragile trust beginning to form between them. The crystal pools, she said carefully. That's what you're protecting? Come, Lasara said suddenly, shouldering her rifle. I will show you what your uninhabited surveys missed. But I warn you, Commander Sarah Blake, once you have seen the heart of what we defend, you will understand why we cannot yield. They walked through the crystalline forest in companionable silence, with Sarah trying not to gawk at the way the trees seemed to pulse with their own bioluminescent rhythms. Occasionally, Lasara would point out features that Sarah's human eyes had missed, patterns in the crystal growth that indicated water sources, marks on tree trunks that served as territorial boundaries, and subtle variations in the light patterns that apparently conveyed complex information about the health of the ecosystem. Your translation device, Lasara said as they crested a low hill, it works well, but it cannot convey nuance. When I say sacred, your device renders it as religious significance. But for my people, sacred means essential for survival. The crystal pools are not temples. They are wombs. They emerged into a clearing that took Sarah's breath away. Dozens of perfectly circular pools carved into the crystalline bedrock reflected the twin suns like liquid mirrors, but the water itself seemed to shimmer with an inner light that had nothing to do with reflected sunlight. Around each pool, delicate crystal formations rose like frozen flowers, creating an environment of such ethereal beauty that Sarah understood immediately why the Zephyrians would fight to protect it. It's incredible, she whispered. And dying, Lasara replied, her voice heavy with grief. Watch the third pool from the left. See how the light flickers. 2 seasons ago, it burned steady. The mining operations have disrupted the underground water table. The mineral composition is changing, and our young cannot survive the alterations. Sarah knelt beside the indicated pool and activated her scanner, watching the readouts with growing horror. The water contained trace amounts of heavy metals and industrial compounds that were indeed toxic to developing life forms. How many pools have been affected? 15 of 43, Lasara said. And the contamination spread slowly but inevitably. My scientists estimate that within 3 seasons, none will remain viable. 3 seasons, Sarah repeated, doing the mental conversion to human standard time. That's about 18 months. Lasara, why didn't you just tell us? If we'd known. Would you have believed us? Lasara asked, her amber eyes meeting Sarah's with devastating directness. A species you had never encountered, claiming that your profitable mining operations were somehow harmful to invisible offspring in pools you had not even detected? Or would you have demanded proof, studies, verification that would have taken more time than we have? Sarah opened her mouth to argue, then closed it as she realized Lasara was absolutely right. The colonial authorities' first response would have been to demand extensive environmental impact studies while continuing operations. By the time the bureaucratic process concluded, it would have been too late. So you chose to fight, Sarah said. I chose to buy time, Lasara corrected. Every raid that forces your people to rebuild defenses instead of expanding operations gives us a few more days. Every attack that makes your leadership question the profitability of this world is a small victory. But I know it is only delaying the inevitable. Your technology is superior. Your numbers are greater. Eventually, you will drive us away or destroy us entirely. Sarah studied the Queen's profile as she gazed out over the threatened pools. Unless a miracle occurs, Lasara replied with a bitter smile. Unless someone appears who is willing to choose understanding over conquest. But I am a warrior, not a dreamer. Maybe, Sarah said quietly, you're both. Queen Lasara led Sarah deeper into the crystal caverns beneath the pools, where the bioluminescent glow intensified into something that resembled the aurora borealis trapped in stone. The passages were clearly artificial but carved with such artistic sensibility that they felt organic, flowing like frozen water through the bedrock. This is where we raise our young, Lasara explained, her voice echoing softly off the crystalline walls. The pools above are just the beginning. The true nurseries lie here, where the water has been filtered through sacred crystals for thousands of years. Sarah's scanner was going haywire, registering energy signatures and life forms that didn't fit any classification system in her database. Lasara, how do your people reproduce? Because these readings suggest something far more complex than anything in our xenobiology textbooks. We are born from the harmony between water, crystal, and light, Lasara replied, then paused at Sarah's confused expression. Perhaps that is too poetic for your scientific mind. We begin as energy patterns in the crystal matrix, gaining physical form as we absorb minerals and nutrients from the sacred waters. The process takes 2 full seasons, and any disruption to the chemical balance results in death, Sarah finished, understanding flooding through her. That's why the heavy metal contamination is so devastating. It's not just poisoning the water, it's disrupting the entire formation process. Now you begin to understand why we cannot simply relocate, Lasara said, leading Sarah into a vast chamber where hundreds of crystal formations pulsed with gentle light. Each of these contains a developing soul. They cannot be moved, cannot be rushed, cannot be saved if the environment fails. Sarah stared at the nursery in wonder and horror. How many? This chamber holds nearly 1,000. There are 15 such chambers on this continent alone. Lasara's voice carried the weight of absolute responsibility. Every raid I order, every battle I fight, I do so knowing that failure means the death of an entire generation. Sarah's comm unit chose that moment to crackle back to life with Maya's increasingly frantic voice. Commander, I've re-established contact with the orbital station. Admiral Thompson is demanding an immediate extraction, and there's a full tactical squadron en route to our position. ETA 23 minutes. Maya, signal the Admiral that I'm in the middle of crucial negotiations and any military intervention will be considered a hostile act, Sarah replied, though her heart was sinking. Thompson was old-school military, the kind of officer who believed diplomacy was just war by other means. Sarah, he's not listening. The tactical assessment indicates you've been compromised by enemy action. They're coming in hot, with authorization to use whatever force necessary to extract you. Lasara's expression had hardened during the exchange, her hand moving instinctively to her weapon. Your warriors come to take you back. They think I've been captured, Sarah explained. Standard protocol when a diplomatic mission goes silent is to assume the worst and respond accordingly. And their response will be to attack. Sarah closed her eyes, imagining Thompson's reaction to finding his lead negotiator apparently consorting with the enemy in an underground alien facility. Probably, yes. Then you should go, Lasara said quietly. Return to your people before blood is shed unnecessarily. No, Sarah said, surprising herself with the vehemence of her response. I won't let this end in violence because of a misunderstanding. Maya, patch me through to Admiral Thompson directly. Commander, the signal's weak down there, but I can try. Thompson's voice, when it came through, was distorted but unmistakably angry. Blake, what's your status? Are you under duress? Admiral, I'm conducting diplomatic negotiations with Queen Lasara of the Zephyrian people. The situation is delicate, and any military intervention will destroy the progress we've made. You've been missing for over 4 hours with no communication. For all we know, you're speaking under coercion. Sarah looked at Lasara, who was listening to the exchange with the patient expression of someone accustomed to watching her careful plans fall apart due to forces beyond her control. An idea struck her, born of desperation and perhaps a touch of madness. "Maya, can you establish a visual link?" "I can try, but the quality will be terrible." "Do it." A few moments later, a fuzzy hologram of Admiral Thompson materialized in the crystal chamber, his square jaw and gray mustache giving him the appearance of a man carved from granite. His expression was initially relieved, then confused, then deeply suspicious as he took in his surroundings. "Blake, where exactly are you?" "I'm having tea with Queen Lasara in her underground palace," Sarah replied, which was technically true since Lasara had indeed offered her a cup of something that resembled tea, even if it glowed faintly blue. "We're discussing the environmental concerns that have led to the recent conflicts." Thompson's expression shifted through several phases of disbelief. "You're having tea? With the enemy? Underground?" "She's not the enemy, Admiral. She's trying to protect her people's children from industrial contamination. The mining operations have been poisoning their nurseries." "Commander," Thompson said in the tone he usually reserved for particularly dense subordinates, "you are sitting in what appears to be an alien military installation, discussing classified mining operations with a hostile force. This conversation is over. Extraction in 15 minutes. The hologram winked out, leaving Sarah and Lasara staring at each other in the sudden silence. "Your admiral does not trust easily," Lasara observed. "He's not wrong to be cautious," Sarah admitted. "From his perspective, I've violated about 6 different protocols and potentially compromised operational security. But if those tactical squadrons arrive here with weapons hot, my people will defend the nurseries," Lasara said simply. "We have no choice." Sarah could hear the distant rumble of approaching aircraft through the crystal formations above them. In a few minutes, this chamber would become a battleground, with human military forces facing desperate Zephyrian defenders while 1,000 developing souls hung in the balance. "There's another option," Sarah said, making a decision that would probably end her military career. "Maya, patch me through to Colonial Command. Emergency diplomatic override." "Sarah, what are you doing?" "Something that's either brilliant or career suicide," Sarah replied. "Probably both." When the connection opened, Sarah found herself addressing Director Hamilton, the civilian authority overseeing the Kepler 442b operations. "Director, this is Commander Blake requesting immediate suspension of all mining operations on Kepler 442b pending environmental impact assessment." "Commander, you're not authorized to." "I'm invoking Article 12 of the Colonial Charter," Sarah interrupted. "Protection of indigenous life forms takes precedence over resource extraction. I have evidence that current operations are causing genocide against the native population." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Hamilton's voice came through with careful neutrality. "Commander, that's a very serious accusation. You're willing to stake your career on it?" Sarah looked at Lasara, who was watching her with an expression of growing hope and disbelief. "Yes, Director. I am." "Then you have 24 hours to provide conclusive evidence." "And Blake?" "Admiral Thompson is still authorized to extract you if he determines you're compromised." As the connection closed, Lasara stepped closer to Sarah. "You would sacrifice your position among your people to protect mine?" "Someone has to choose understanding over conquest," Sarah replied, echoing Lasara's earlier words. "Besides, I have a feeling that protecting your people and protecting mine might turn out to be the same thing." The confrontation Sarah had dreaded arrived with the thunder of military transports landing in the crystal groves above. Through the cavern's natural acoustics, she could hear Admiral Thompson's voice barking orders to establish a perimeter and prepare for potential hostile contact. But there was another sound that made Lasara's ears flatten against her head, the distinctive harmonic resonance of Zephyrian war horns. "The warrior clans have arrived," Lasara said grimly, checking her weapons. "They will have detected your military forces and assumed the worst." "How bad is the worst?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know. War Chieftain Korvac leads them. He has never believed in peaceful solutions and has been arguing for total war since the raids began. If he engages your forces. An explosion somewhere above them punctuated her words, followed by the distinctive whine of energy weapons. Sarah's comm unit erupted with overlapping voices as both sides reported contact and requested instructions. Maya, sitrep, Sarah demanded. Commander, we've got approximately 200 Zephyrian warriors in the forest and Admiral Thompson's forces taking defensive positions around the landing zone. No casualties yet, but everyone's trigger-happy and looking for an excuse. Also, there's some guy with really impressive armor demanding to speak with their queen. That would be Korvac, Lasara confirmed. He will insist that I prove my leadership by destroying the human invaders. Among the warrior clans, diplomacy is considered weakness unless backed by demonstrated strength. Sarah studied Lasara's expression, seeing the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. What if we gave them a different kind of demonstration? What do you mean? You challenged me to combat when we first met. I chose understanding instead of fighting. What if we showed both our people that there's strength in unity? Lasara's amber eyes narrowed. You propose that we face them together. I propose that we walk up there, side by side, and show everyone that humans and Zephyrians can stand as allies instead of enemies. Sarah checked her sidearm, more for comfort than any real expectation of needing it. Your people respect strength. Mine respect results. Let's give them both. They emerged from the crystal caverns to find a standoff that could have been choreographed by someone with a talent for dramatic tension. Admiral Thompson's forces had taken position behind hastily erected barriers on one side of the clearing, while Korvac's warriors held the forest edge with weapons trained on the humans. Both sides were clearly waiting for an excuse to open fire. In the center of the clearing stood two figures who perfectly embodied their respective military traditions. Admiral Thompson was every centimeter the career officer, his uniform immaculate despite the crash landing, his gray mustache precisely trimmed, and his expression set in the kind of determined scowl that had probably terrified junior officers for decades. Facing him was War Chieftain Korvac, whose ceremonial armor was a work of art that managed to look both beautiful and utterly lethal, his pointed ears adorned with battle rings that caught the light as he moved. Commander Blake, Thompson called when he spotted Sarah emerging with Lasara. Step away from the hostile and report for immediate extraction. Queen Lasara, Korvac's voice carried easily across the clearing, end this charade and order the destruction of these invaders. The warrior clans grow impatient with your diplomatic games. Sarah and Lasara exchanged glances, then began walking toward the center of the clearing together. The simple act of moving in unison sent ripples of confusion through both military formations. Admiral, Sarah called, her voice carrying the authority of her rank, I'm presenting you with the solution to the Kepler 442b conflict. Queen Lasara has provided evidence that our mining operations are causing environmental genocide. We need to implement immediate protective protocols. Korvac, Lasara's voice held the steel of absolute command. I present you with Commander Sarah Blake, who has chosen to sacrifice her career to protect our children. She has proven that humans can be allies rather than enemies. The war chieftain's expression cycled through surprise, suspicion, and what might have been grudging respect. She fights with words instead of weapons. She fights with courage instead of fear, Lasara replied. The strongest victory is the one that creates allies from former enemies. Admiral Thompson was less easily impressed. Commander, you're dangerously close to insubordination. These people have been conducting raids against our installations. To protect their nurseries from industrial contamination, Sarah replied. Admiral, I've seen their children. They're dying because of our operations. If we can modify our extraction methods to avoid the sensitive areas, we can have both profitable mining and peaceful coexistence. And if we cannot? Sarah looked at Lasara, seeing the quiet strength that had carried her through impossible choices, then back at Thompson. Then we choose the option that lets us sleep at night, sir. The silence that followed was broken by the most unexpected sound imaginable, Korvac laughing. The war chieftain's laughter was like distant thunder, rolling across the clearing and apparently confusing everyone present, including his own warriors. "You would lecture an admiral about conscience," he said to Sarah. "And you," he addressed Lasara, "would trust our future to a human who discards weapons in favor of words. Either you are both mad, or this is the most sensible thing I have witnessed in many seasons." "Probably both," Sarah admitted, which earned her another rumble of laughter from Korvac and what might have been the ghost of a smile from Admiral Thompson. "Very well," Thompson said finally. "Commander, you have 12 hours to provide a comprehensive environmental assessment and a workable compromise solution. If you can't produce both, I'm ordering immediate withdrawal and recommending this system be classified as hostile territory." "And if she succeeds?" Lasara asked. Thompson studied the Zephyrian Queen with the assessing gaze of a career military officer. "Then I suppose we'll be in the unprecedented position of negotiating humanity's first interspecies environmental protection treaty." 6 months later, Sarah stood in a newly constructed joint research facility that straddled the border between human mining operations and Zephyrian sacred lands. Through the transparent aluminum walls, she could see human engineers working alongside Zephyrian artisans to install water purification systems that would protect the nursery pools while still allowing mineral extraction in non-sensitive areas. Her resignation from active military duty had been accepted with more relief than regret by Colonial Command, who were happy to avoid the political complications of having an officer who had become something of a folk hero among the diplomatic corps. Her new position as humanity's first interspecies environmental liaison came with less prestige but considerably more job satisfaction. "The latest water purity reports," Lasara said, entering Sarah's office with a data pad and 2 cups of the glowing blue tea that had become their daily ritual. "All pools are now showing optimal conditions for reproduction. And the mining efficiency reports show we're actually extracting more minerals per day than before the modifications," Sarah replied, accepting her tea with a smile. "Turns out that sustainable practices are also profitable practices. Who would have thought?" Lasara settled into the chair across from Sarah's desk, a piece of furniture that had been specially crafted to accommodate Zephyrian physiology. "Korvac sends his regards, along with a request that you consider teaching tactical diplomacy to his warriors. He believes your approach of choosing understanding over conquest should be part of their training. And Admiral Thompson wants to know if you'd be interested in advising our military on environmental assessment protocols," Sarah replied. "Apparently, your people's integration of ecology and strategy is something our war colleges would like to study." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun set over a world where 2 species had learned to share space instead of fight for it. Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first confrontation in the Crystal Grove, when she had chosen to drop her weapon instead of drawing it. "Do you ever regret it?" Lasara asked quietly. "Giving up your military career for this?" Sarah looked out at the humans and Zephyrians working together in the fading light, building something that neither species could have achieved alone. "Only every day," she said with a grin. "Best decision I ever made." Lasara's ears tilted forward in the expression Sarah had learned meant deep amusement. "Perhaps someday you will teach me this human talent for finding humor in serious moments." "Deal," Sarah replied, raising her cup in a toast. "But only if you teach me that Zephyrian ability to make tea that glows." "The secret," Lasara said, touching her cup to Sarah's, "is choosing the right person to share it with."